That brings us to this week's blend game. And speaking of phenomenal collaborators on film, we're going to be discussing director of photography and noted cinematographer Michael Chapman, who we lost recently. Big time collaborator of the early days of Martin Scorsese and just an unbelievable filmography over the years. You know, we've been doing directors, sometimes we do actors, but every once in a while, someone like Michael Chapman comes around, contributes to some incredible films. And so we're going to be singling out our favorite film that he worked on. So that's difficult because like he's done some phenomenal work, Gabe, I'm saying this to you, in films that I might not necessarily say are like my favorite films. So that makes this a bit of a challenge from that perspective. Yes? No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about his work. If there's something that you say like that cinematography speaks to me more, then I say go with that because we're celebrating him. But if there's, you know, it's a movie that he helped make that you loved, he's a part of that as well. The big part of it.
Kev, I'll start with you then. Where did you go when you were celebrating the life and times of Michael Chapman?
Well, it's interesting because I feel like the obvious ones to go to are like Taxi Driver or like a Raging Bull, and
sure.
You know the black and white and Raging Bull is just outstanding. It looks incredible still to this day. But if we're talking about favorite movies that this person's been involved in, like the one I've seen the most on his list of filmography is Kindergarten Cop. And I know that sounds strange to bring that up because we're a film podcast. We discuss cinematography all the time and all these amazing shots. I mean, Taxi Driver and Raging Bull I feel like those are just those are automatically just amazing films.
But I can't pick them for favorite. Like Taxi Driver, it's amazing, but I'd never just pop it on to pass the time.
I'm with
you.
Wait.
What are we doing? We're not picking. They were picking his favorite work. We're not like I'm not saying.
I'm not saying
Gary Oldman
favorite movie that he's
his
done.
work. His work.
We're celebrating a cinematographer. That's the emphasis on cinematography.
For sure.
Like I'm not saying that. I didn't say that Hannibal is my favorite movie that Gary Oldman's ever been in. It's just my favorite performance of his.
Okay, fair enough. I see what you're saying.
First time on the show.
Well, Cav, keep going with your pick then.
I just love Kindergarten Cop. Yeah, thank you. I love Kindergarten Cop. I think it's an incredible film. I think it's underrated. I mean, I think people don't really think about it from a cinematography standpoint, but I do think it's just a really well told story. And I think Ivan Reitman did a phenomenal job with that movie. And I don't know. For me, looking at this list, that's just the one that jumped out at me. I mean, you can go through Primal Fear, Space Jam. I mean, the guy's directed or DP'd some of the greatest movies in the history of cinema. Do I think that Raging Bull is not as good as Kindergarten Cop? No, that's not what I'm saying. If I'm looking at his list and I'm looking for the film that I would put on, my favorite movie that he's been involved in that list would be Kindergarten Cop, just from a strictly nostalgic realm.
Jake, your pick is?
I'm going to pick based on his cinematography.
Are you picking best or favorite?
My favorite work of his cinematography, because he's a cinematographer.
Yes.
I'm going with Taxi Driver.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is just because like I never knew that New York. Like my New York has always been Disneyfied. You get your family and you walk around Times Square and you got Broadway all over the place and you got the Lion King billboard. Like that's the New York that I knew growing up. But I felt like what he captured and the way he captured the New York of that era kind of shows this like city rotting from the inside, but also puts Travis Bickle in the frame, and that it also kind of shows that he's a man, like New York is a city rotting from the inside. He's kind of like a man rotting from the inside, and just the way that he captures just the light, the way that he shoots what could be, we've seen 1,000 different ways or that people have shot, the taxi sort of like, sequence, people in cars and someone driving but just the way that, the way that he does it, even with Scorsese sitting in the backseat, just the way that he films that. I just think it's both beautiful and haunting and dirty all at the same time, and really captures a city that has been photographed 10 billion times in cinema, but he does it unlike I think any other movie that ever has captured the city of New York. So I choose Taxi Driver because of his work as a cinematographer, which is what he is.
My pick is going to split the line. Gabe, I'm pivoting away from the one that I told you. And I'm going to choose Doc Hollywood. Because again, when I looked at his filmography, Doc Hollywood stands out to me for this reason. I grew up in New York, not quite the taxi driver in New York that you're discussing, Jake, but not that far off from it. I was at least there during the 70s and 80s when it wasn't, quite as Disneyfied as it is. And I remember watching Doc Hollywood and having a very visceral reaction to the way that he shoots the small town South. And I think that that's a huge part of the reason why I live in North Carolina now, that I felt a very strong pull toward the South Carolina town that Michael J. Fox lands himself in. I looked around at New York and the hustle and bustle and everything that comes with New York, and I thought, like, that's a better lifestyle. I would much rather be part of that sort of country, slower atmosphere. And I realized, looking at the filmography of Michael Chapman, not even knowing that I didn't even know that he DP'd on that movie. But I can remember clear as a bell how much that movie impacted me and made me think, this is going to sound really strange too. Doc Hollywood and one other film made me feel like, oh my God, I can't wait to go down and see the South.
Oh, brother?
Nope. No. Before this is Sleeping with the Enemy. Julia Roberts escaping from her predatory husband and ends up in like a rural bumpkin South Carolina town. I actually think it was the Midwest, but they shot it in Aiken, South Carolina. And I remember watching those scenes and just thinking, that looks so inviting. That looks so warm and comfortable and homey. And I can't wait to go down and coming down to North Carolina after being in DC for several years. That's what we found. We found that environment of, if you're going to the grocery store, you better get used to having a conversation with people who are waiting on you, who are cutting your sandwich meats or checking you out. Like, they're gonna ask you how you are today, and you better have an answer, because, or if you're going to a restaurant, like, you're not getting your food right away. It's going to take plenty of time, because you're going to have multiple conversations with all the people through you, and it's just, you slow down, because that's the mood that permeates this area. And Doc Hollywood is a movie that introduced me to that concept, and I'm going to credit Michael Chapman for the way that he shot rural South Carolina. Which, again, makes no sense, because why Michael J. Fox was going from New York to Beverly Hills and pit stopped in South Carolina is just a classic Los Angeles screenwriter having no idea how anything happens, but is like,
having no access to a map.
We have to get him to South Carolina somehow. And the way that he detours off the road is fucking cows in the middle of the road. God, it's so many bad Southern stereotypes, but works really, really well. And
you mentioned, and this is speaking of detours, you mentioned just like things that happen in the South that don't happen anywhere else. I'm from even before I moved to the burbs of Houston, I'm from a very small town, and I brought one of my buddies there, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and he noticed something that, to me, and I'm curious as to if they do it where you're at, Sean, where when you drive by someone, you just kind of wave.
Oh, all the time.
And I drove by a few people, and we did the wave, and my buddy goes, "Do you know all those people?"
Yeah.
And I go, "No, you just he goes, "Why do all of you wave at each other?" And I was like, "It's just what you do. You just, when someone drives by, you wave at them."
When we're walking Squirty every single night, we walk Squirt after dinner, and if anyone is driving through our neighborhood, when you pass them, you just give a wave.
Yeah. Give them the wave.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah. Oh no, that's obviously standard around here, and yes, would be very strange to somebody outside of the South.
Yeah,
I would imagine. All right, audience picks. Randy Buss, Evan Rook, and several others chose The Fugitive. Now, I don't imagine that they chose The Fugitive because of his cinematography in it.
Right.
I think they chose The Fugitive because they like The Fugitive.
Exactly.
They don't host the show.
Aiden
they're
Erdahl.
playing the game based on how we thought the game was played.
We've had this discussion 1,000 times.
Well, we had 1,001. Aiden Erdahl said Taxi Driver. Stephanie DeLise went with my previous pick, which was The Lost Boys. His work on Lost Boys is unbelievably good. And again, I didn't even know he shot it until I looked at it. So for next week, since we're heading into October, last October we did something where we had a theme all the way throughout. And it was horror type movies and horror themes that we branched off with. And we're going to continue that going into this October as we get ready for Jake to drop the monster of all packages. We can talk about it, right? You've teased it, haven't we? Yeah. Jake has a great package that he's putting together for Fox 32 on screen monsters, and we will have plenty more to share with that as it comes together. So for next week, you can reach out on Twitter using hashtag Haunted House Blend. So it's
Oh,
a
that's
movie
cool.
that has
That's
to
really
do
cool.
with a haunted house. So let us know your pick using that hashtag or sending us a email to realblend@cinemablend.com.